Welcome to the Diabetes Podcast, where real stories meet real science, helping you take charge, not just take medicine. Today we're unpacking lipids, what they are, how they move through your body, and why they matter so much for diabetes and heart health. If you've ever wondered why triglycerides creep up, why belly fat feels stubborn, why your LDL looks okay but your risk still isn't, or how fatty liver can happen without alcohol, this one's for you. We'll break down the boats that carry fat in your blood, the difference between LDL cholesterol and the number of LDL particles, and why insulin resistance rewires lipid metabolism in ways that raise cardiovascular risk. Most importantly, we'll share practical, evidence-based strategies to begin reversing lipid overload. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Diabetes Podcast. I'm Richie.
And I'm Amber.
And Amber, today we're talking all about lipids.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And I think that it's good. It's a good place to start with quotes from people to kind of help you relate to the situation that we're talking about with lipids. Some things that people say would be, my triglycerides keep going up, or I'm gaining fat, but it's in my stomach area.
I've said that once or twice.
As long as you say it and I don't, I think we're okay. My doctor says that my LDL is okay, but my risk is still high. Why is that? What is that about? Why do I have fatty liver? I don't drink alcohol, and most people understand fatty liver is often associated with cirrhosis of the liver and alcoholic disease, I guess. Why do I feel so tired? Pretty common one. And the biggest, these symptoms are not random. They reflect the way that your body is struggling to handle fat internally. So we've been taught historically to perhaps fear fat on the plate or cholesterol in food, but the real issue, the one that's tied to diabetes and cardiovascular disease, is more about how your body packages, how your body stores, transports, and shuttles these lipids. Because if there's one connecting line throughout all of insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, cardiovascular disease, metabolic inflammation, it is lipid overload and the mismanagement of lipids at the cellular level. So I see your face. You're like, what? Eyes glossing over.
Yeah. It's hang on, kids. This one's going to be rough.
So let's try to make that make sense. Make it make sense. So let's talk about what lipids actually are as best we can. So lipids are fats and oils that your body uses for several things. Cell structure, energy, of course. Fat is a major source of energy in the body. Hormone production, and cell signaling. So biochemically, the definition is molecules that don't mix with water. And if you've ever mixed fat and water together, maybe vinegar and oil, you see that they separate. They don't mix. The part that really matters for you is that lipids are essential. They only become harmful when they build up where they don't belong. And that spillover is the biochemical root of insulin resistance.
And I think that's worth saying again. It's probably not as trendy now, but I can remember when fat-free was huge, right? Everything was fat-free this, and fat's not bad. It's absolutely critical for normal human functioning.
Yep. Lipids they're essential, and there are essential fatty acids called that for a reason. And lipids only become harmful when they build up where they don't belong. So there's your repetition for you. And there are three primary lipids. There's the storage form of lipids, which are triglycerides. There are free fatty acids, which is the fatty acids are the fuel form. And then there's cholesterol, which is the structural and signal molecules, which could also be called hormones. And in addition, there are sort of these ancillary side supporting actors, if you will. And those would be your sphingolipids.
The what?
Sphingolipids, also known as ceramides. And these are sort of like the smoke detectors, the metabolic danger signals within insulin resistance. Then there's phytosterols, which are plant-based LDL lowering sterols. So we're going to connect each of these to diabetes and cardiovascular disease risk. So before we go deeper into what lipids are, I think it's important, going back to that oil and water not mixing, to really understand how lipids move throughout your body, because they can't float around freely in your bloodstream because your blood is water-based. We are a large part water, and lipids need carriers. So you can think of these carriers as boats. So that brings us to lipoproteins. So lipoproteins are packages that move fats, or boats, if you will, that move fats through the bloodstream. And there are different types of boats, or some main classes of these lipoproteins. Number one, the very large chylomicrons. And it sounds like a Star Wars. What was the what was the Star Wars chlamydia?
Oh man,
Metachlorians?
you're gonna out me right here. There you go. Oh, you said it, not me. You're the nerd.
I did. I could pull that somewhere in my brain. So not metachlorians.
Because you're clearly the Star Wars fan around here.
Of the two of us, yeah.
Yeah.
So back to chylomicrons. These carry dietary fat, your food fat after meals. The chylomicrons carry those around. And then the VLDLs, very low density lipoprotein, carry triglycerides made in the liver. So fat goes to the liver to get packaged into these. And then you have intermediate density particles, IDLs, which are kind of like your leftover particles, kind of until they need to be used, they get stored here. And then you have your LDL, which delivers cholesterol to your tissues. So cells, tissues, organs. And then your HDL, high density lipoprotein. These are the recycling particles. They help reverse the cholesterol transport. They bring it back to the liver for processing.
So I know when I get my blood work done, I definitely see LDL and HDL on there. Where would the VLDL and the IDL and not the metachlorians, the chylomicrons, where do they show up in blood work unless you're getting like a specialty test, or is it just kind of that they're not in the quantities that the LDL and the HDL are?
They're not going to be in your typical blood work. No. You won't see them. You're not going to see your chylomicron levels. You don't get to see the level of metachlorians that you have to see if you have the force with you. You don't get that.
It was a special test they were running on Tatooine. Right. I got you. Okay.
Yes. So if lipids are the what, then lipoproteins are the how. And this matters because diabetes can massively alter lipoprotein metabolism. And people with insulin resistance often have their VLDL is higher. They have higher remnant particles, or the higher IDLs, smaller and denser LDLs, lower of the good stuff, the HDL, higher triglycerides, lower adiponectin, higher ceramides. And these patterns dramatically raise cardiovascular risk, even if the LDL isn't very high. So, like you said, you see your HDL, you see your LDL, but it doesn't necessarily give a full picture of cardiovascular risk. And so that brings us into a very, very long held hypothesis called the lipid hypothesis. So you very likely heard of it, and this has been around for decades, that says that at the higher LDL levels, LDL causes heart disease. And that's mostly true. There have been hundreds of studies that have validated this to be true, but it is becoming more and more incomplete as different testing methods become available. Just as technology advances, being able to see more things, it's more incomplete. And your risk of heart disease depends more on the number and the type of the boats, if you will. The number and the type of lipoprotein boats is more of a predictor of risk than how much cholesterol is inside the boat. So the actual truth is that, yes, LDL can cause fatty plaques within the artery walls, but the number of the LDL particles, also the ApoB, matters more than the cholesterol content inside them. So LDL-C, which is the cholesterol content, is helpful, but ApoB, which is more about the particle count, is more predictive of heart disease risk. So going back to those classes of your lipoproteins, every LDL, VLDL, IDL, and lipoprotein A particle carries one ApoB. So ApoB equals the number of atherogenic particles. So we haven't talked about lipoprotein A yet. It's kind of the genetic wild card. This is the part where genetics can really play a role in cholesterol. And it's an LDL-like particle that's very sticky, quite inflammatory, and prothrombotic. So if you get a cut and you get your scab, that's thrombosis happening. And your level of lipoprotein A can radically change your risk. So that is a special test you can get, and you really only need to get it about once, and then you see if your risk is higher. And we'll talk about ways to reduce your risk even if you have this genetic component later on. So then your remnant lipoproteins from VLDL cholesterol and your IDL are also highly atherogenic. And to top it all off, diabetes dramatically increases these atherogenic particles. So that was a lot. So I would say a better, more simplified explanation is that atherosclerosis, and just to walk it back, atherosclerosis is a pattern of a disease characterized by lesions in the walls of the arteries. So if you're looking at a heart attack or a clogged artery, you have the foam cells that create more permeability within the artery, and you get these lesions. And it's not so much that you get a narrowing and a narrowing and a narrowing of the artery. That can occur, but you also could throw a clot, and it's that clot that blocks the passage of blood and oxygen supply, life-giving substance to a heart or a brain, causing stroke or a heart attack, that sort of thing. So atherosclerosis is driven by the number of lipoprotein particles that can enter the arterial wall, especially the ApoB containing particles. So you can have normal LDL-C, and remember, LDL-C is how much cholesterol is inside the particles. a high ApoB, which is how many particles are present, and you'll have a high atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk. And this is very common in type 2 and prediabetes.
So again, I think normally we think type 2 diabetes, prediabetes is all sugar related. How is this related to type 2 and prediabetes?
I think the thing to understand is that insulin resistance is the thing that shifts the liver into overproduction mode and creates more VLDL, more remnants, more tightly packaged, small, dense LDL. And this is why focusing on LDL alone can hide risk in people with metabolic disease. So I think you said on your labs, you don't see the LDL and the HDL, and we had mentioned.
No, I do see those. I just don't see
that's right.
the other ones.
Right. Especially not the lipoprotein A, right? So,
yeah. I mean, full disclosure, I have no idea what any of this means. I just bring home my blood work like a report card, and sometimes I get in trouble. And
yes, you. And speaking of getting in trouble, you did get in trouble for your triglyceride to HDL ratio, which was not as favorable as we would like to see it. So I would say the everyday insulin resistance marker, of course, you could get your insulin levels checked. We've talked about that before. But in terms of everyday blood work that you would get on your complete metabolic panel with your annual labs would be your triglyceride to HDL ratio. And the reason this is important is that it can reflect liver fat, insulin resistance. It correlates quite well with VLDL. It correlates with remnant cholesterol and really strongly with cardiovascular disease risk. So in general, the lower the ratio of triglycerides to HDL, the healthier the metabolic environment. So if you got your labs in front of you, if you want to jot this down and look at this, and this is usually written on your labs because you get your lab and then you get sort of your interpretation of what it means. And I haven't seen this on every lab, but it was actually on yours, Richie. If your triglyceride to HDL ratio is greater than 3, you're likely insulin resistant to some degree. And then if your triglyceride to HDL ratio is greater than 4, you have a high cardiometabolic risk. So yours was, okay. I don't remember if it was.
It was not good.
Yeah, I remember that take home, but I meant to look up where it was, but I didn't want to.
Well, no, because like my HDL is typically, I think, less than 30.
It's and that's the part.
And that's up from like 16 or 20.
Mm-hmm.
And my total is well above like 75. So yeah. It's safe to say that I'm falling into probably both of these categories.
And your HDL has improved. It started out at 16 and then it was maybe 22 and then 26 and it's going up in the right direction. We just got to keep it going. Yeah.
I'm just going to blame this on genetics. And we spoke about it before. My dad had highly low or very, very low HDL, I think forever.
Yeah. Right. And there is a genetic component to this risk, but that does not mean that there's nothing you can do about it, that you just... I'm
just going to blame it on genetics. It's just not anything that I can do.
That's not okay. And the reason that's not okay is because your father died before the age of 70 and I want to keep you around till 100 at least. So that's not okay. All right. You had something to say?
No, I'm going to be quiet.
All right.
I've learned enough at this point in time to not push it too much.
All right. So we've discussed the transport system and risk markers. So let's zoom out to look at fat as an endocrine organ.
Okay. So I think we've hinted at this a little bit in other podcasts, but this is fairly kind of a new shift within the medical community as far as thinking about fat having function outside of just being tissue. It actually kind of functions as a whole to change some. It is metabolically active, but maybe not in the way that we want it to be. Can you get a little bit into that?
Yeah. I think it's easy to think of fat tissue as dormant storage. It's just like goes to this, like kind of like how we might do. You might have a storage shed somewhere and you're not going to that storage shed every day. But this is not just dormant storage. Fat is an active hormone factory. So I'm going to give you a reminder of what endocrine organs are, because they are glands and organs that make hormones and release them directly into the blood so that they can travel to tissues and organs all over the body. So your pancreas is an endocrine organ, one of several. So fat is also an endocrine organ. So despite what diet culture might have you believe, fat is not bad. There's healthy fat tissue, healthy adipose tissue, and this tissue stores lipids safely. It keeps fatty acids out of organs. It can release adiponectin, which is very insulin sensitizing, and it whispers quietly, regulating your energy. Oh, you need a little bit of energy? Let's give you some fat there. And it handles glucose and fatty acid flexibility. Then on the flip side of that, you have overstuffed adipose tissue. And this is the not so healthy side of that endocrine organ.
I think that's also not the technical term. What exactly are we talking about with overstuffed adipose tissue?
Totally the technical term. Leave me alone.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
So that's what we're going to use, because we want to try to get it into the realm of understanding, because this is really complicated. Well, depending on who you are, it is a lot of biochemistry going on here. So when things are not so great because of excess high fructose corn syrup in the diet, excess calories overall, this excess caloric intake goes to fat storage, which is overstuffed adipose tissue. And this can leak fatty acids into the liver and muscle cells, produces inflammatory cytokines, which just release inflammation overall. It elevates those ceramides, increases VLDL production, worsens insulin resistance. And like all of these things are interconnected. It's not like these are acting independently of one another. It's just a whole cascade of events that's happening. Including raising triglycerides, causing fatty liver over time, producing smaller, denser LDL particles, lowering the good HDL cholesterol, which then is going to raise your triglyceride to HDL ratio and increasing cardiovascular risk. And all of that is the metabolic engine behind insulin resistance, hypertension, heart disease, elevated fasting glucose, and rising atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk, even if your LDL cholesterol is quote unquote okay. The fat tissue is overwhelmed, and the lipoproteins reflect that. And just to be repetitive, that looks like high triglycerides, high very low density lipoproteins, low HDL, more LDL particles, high ApoB, and high ceramides. And that is just classic diabetes dyslipidemia. And dyslipidemia is just your fat systems are dysregulated. So then let's talk a little bit more about the ceramides, those supporting actors, if you will. And these are kind of the the toxic lipids of insulin resistance. They tell the real story of metabolic health far more than LDL alone. And so ceramides are a family of waxy lipid molecules in the cell membrane. And when the fat cells are stressed, they increase. And again, they're like the smoke detector. They're the danger signals inside the cell, because when the ceramides rise, insulin signaling breaks down, inflammation increases, fat accumulates in the liver, the lipoproteins become more atherogenic. That means more likely to form plaques in the vessel walls, and plaque formation can accelerate. And these might be that missing biochemical link between diabetes, dyslipidemia, fatty liver, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Like, why are these all interconnected and interlinked? It could be very much due to the ceramides. And the good news is they can fall with weight reduction, improved dietary patterns, reduced saturated fat, increased fiber, increased exercise, improved adiponectin levels. So that's the piece that offers hope within. Like, if you didn't understand what in the world I just said, that is okay.
And I did not.
So the core message here is that type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance reprogram lipid metabolism in a bad way, in a way that dramatically increases cardiovascular risk. So even if you have normal body weight, even if your LDL cholesterol's not that bad, or you have a normal A1C, the risk is there, and it shows up in all the ways that we talked about before. And that pattern of the diabetes dyslipidemia can increase atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk 3 to 4.5 times as much compared to someone with the same LDL cholesterol but normal insulin sensitivity. So cholesterol is part of the story, but lipids and lipoproteins, the boats that carry the lipids, in the context of insulin resistance, is really the full story, and it is a core defect of type 2 diabetes. So the answer is not, I'll just eliminate carbs, I'll just avoid fat, I'm just lazy, I've failed. It is not that. It's lipid overload, metabolic traffic, and most importantly, da-da-da-da, dun-da-da-da, it is reversible. So you get the right interventions in place, and these things can improve very quickly within weeks to months. These can improve. So let's talk about strategies, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the good stuff. Number one, modest weight loss. So again, it's not necessarily weight bound, but improvements are found when people lose weight. So about 5 to 10% loss of any kind of excess body fat can increase adiponectin and reduces ceramides and reverses fatty liver. That's the kind of the pathway that modest weight loss can help in this respect. Another is to reduce, Richie, just reduce liver fat. Easy peasy. Like,
I do that
what?
every day.
And this could be from reducing simple sugars and things like that. But the way that this could help is by reducing those tightly packaged lipids, or your VLDL, and also the cholesterol remnants. And this lowers ApoB. Increasing physical activity. I don't think we have done a podcast yet where we didn't mention increasing physical activity in any way possible, because this improves triglycerides by burning free fatty acids. It helps burn up more fat. And so you're going to get benefits there. And that's not the only pathway. This is just more of the pathway as it relates to lipids.
And as far as activity, everything that we've been advocating for, the post-meal walks and that kind of stuff, it's at the lower intensity levels where the majority of the energy being utilized is those free-floating fatty acids. It's not really until the higher intensity levels where we, I can't access fat fast enough, and really it kind of dynamically shifts over to the sugar pathway. So for as far as burning up that excess free-floating fat in your system, it is the lower intensity, you're walking, that kind of stuff is right in line with that.
Yeah, it all counts. It all adds up. It's very important. Then dietary patterns that are rich in fiber, because fiber can bind bile acids in the gastrointestinal tract, thereby lowering LDL, lowering those cholesterol remnants. Then plant sterols, which are called phytosterols. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about cholesterol later in a different episode. Then if you improve adiponectin, which is from the weight loss and exercise mentioned before, a Mediterranean style eating pattern has the most studied, the most beneficial cardiovascular results across studies. And one reason it's thought to do this is that it increases those phytosterols. However, the recommendation is really 2 grams of phytosterols, which is nearly impossible to get through diet alone. So we'll have a whole cholesterol module where we'll talk about that. And then beans, nuts, seeds, whole grains, mostly because these increase fiber, they help with weight loss, and they've got a favorable lipid profile to them. And reducing saturated fat, because this improves the LDL particle number.
I'm just going to real quick reiterate, despite recent guidance at the national level, we are advocating to reduce saturated fat in your diet, not increase it.
Agreed. Yes. And that is backed by study after study, peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo-controlled, really high-quality studies across time support that. And adequate sleep, mostly because sleep improves insulin sensitivity, which improves that triglyceride-to-HDL ratio and improves LDL particle size. So oftentimes when you're given just some blanket nutrition strategy or exercise advice, it's like, why do I need to do all of this? Or you're just trying to restrict everything that I love. And I promise it's not about that. It is about restoring metabolic flexibility and reducing metabolic overload. So take any one of those strategies, start there, add another, and measure your labs across time for effectiveness. And that's
so from a completely selfish standpoint of the strategies that you just talked about, which is most effective in raising HDL?
I would say stopping smoking if you smoke.
Done.
If you smoke, you do not smoke. So nice try. Exercise would be a great way to improve HDL cholesterol.
Is that just total exercise, or is there an intensity level associated with that as it relates to HDL?
Mm-hmm. The recommendation is at least 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week
of
cardiovascular. So it is recommended cardiovascular exercise, which is getting your heart rate into that cardiovascular zone for a minimum of 15 minutes.
Okay.
To get that cardiovascular benefit there. But I mean, you got to start somewhere. So start, and then you can get to that level.
Okay.
That's all I got.
This one was not a long one. Thank God. because
I don't want your head to explode, Richie.
There's some stress on my brain. I am so glad there's not a test on this because I don't know that I'd pass.
Well, we're going to talk about cholesterol a little further because
Right,
I think you have to have little small snippets of this because it's a lot of biochemistry. The chylomicrons and the LDLs and the VLDLs and the IDLs, like this is not simple stuff. So
if you enjoyed this, you're going to get even more of it in our cholesterol episode. But we're going to really try and kind of tie a bow on it. This one was big enough that we had to break it into two. And we will, just like we did for the GLP-1 stuff, we will definitely bring it home, hopefully with a little bit more humor.
Maybe we can do cholesterol
episode.
as it relates to metachlorians and becoming a Jedi. I don't know. Maybe that's beyond the scope of the time.
Please stop. Just no more.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I thought you would really like that, but okay.
I do, and you're ruining it for me.
Oh.
So please.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
This has been yet another episode of the Diabetes Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you again next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Diabetes Podcast. Remember, fat itself isn't the enemy. Lipid overload and mismanagement are. Watch that triglyceride-to-HDL ratio. Think about the number of particles, not just the cholesterol inside them. And aim for small, sustainable changes that restore metabolic flexibility. We'll be back soon to go deeper on cholesterol, what really drives risk, and what you can do about it. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to give it a like and leave a review. This really helps to promote and sustain this free podcast and get the word out to the millions of people worldwide that are struggling with type 2 and pre-diabetes, letting them know that remission is possible if you take action today. And if you have additional questions or need additional support, reach out to us at support@empowerdiabetes.com. Until next time, take courage. You can do this, and we can help.